We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome everyone to the Freddie and Alyssa show. This is episode 1003.
That's not true. I think we're episode 35.
Episode 35.
I really hope that's correct.
Of the Freddie and Alyssa show.
Welcome, guys.
We have a lot to catch up on today.
Yes, we do.
A couple things. Let's start on a lighter note before we get into more of a deeper conversation about something that's going on with a documentary that just came out.
Ep 35.
Ep 35. So 23andMe.
Yes, 23andMe. Which is kind of crazy. You just got your results back. What were your results, first of all?
Results were really good. I have 3 full-blooded Italian grandparents. So I always thought I was around 75% Italian. But the more I'm starting to learn about all this, and what came up is that I'm 65, like point something Italian.
Yeah.
I got a little French and German. But I'm mainly like 96% European. So everything is from like France, Germany, UK. Yeah, so I'm 96% European and 3% Western Asian and North African.
Yes.
And they break that down as well. But yeah, I have like almost 8% French and German, almost 4% British Irish, and 6.6% of Southern European. I could break that down what that is, Greek. So I'm kind of a lot of
So I got me an Italiano.
Italian European, yeah. So it was like really cool to see that. But I did it because I wanted to see the health stuff too. I thought it was really interesting just to see if I'm carrying any genes that I need to pay attention to. And I feel very blessed that everything came back, and they had a huge list. That the only thing that my gene carries is, I forget the abbreviation for it, but it's basically like your eyesight will gradually get older. I'll probably need glasses, but balding wasn't there, and that's more of not a serious one. But even some of like the cancer genes or diseases, I don't carry any of those variants. I think they can even recognize like Alzheimer's. They can recognize Parkinson's, like certain things, and none of that existed. So I feel very blessed to have good genes in that regard.
Well, and it was crazy too, because I did Ancestry, which is a different service, but I didn't get any of the health benefits or if I carry specific genes. And it was really just showing me like the regions that we were from, because I've always been very curious about finding out more about my dad's paternal side, the birth side, because he was adopted and he does not know much about it. And it's kind of crazy because at the same time, my dad was doing 23andMe as well. And a few days before you got your results, he got his. So we found out a lot about his paternal side, where he comes from. He does have roots from Mexico, and that showed up in mine as well. And it's crazy because we are on the hunt to kind of find out and see if we can find that side of just who they are, what we're all about, because that is part of who we are. So 23andMe has been really very, very strong in our life, I feel like, this weekend. We've been doing so much research and really utilizing the website. And it's 23andMe. I want to do it now too, to see if I can connect with any relatives.
I think I think the issues with 23andMe, first of all, Ancestry, in my opinion, is on first glance, just very basic.
Yeah.
I think that 23andMe is a 2.0 version. Just off the aesthetic of the website and the easy understanding, like Ancestry just confused me. And it kind of sucks that people are splitting between the two, because I might have a cousin or someone who used Ancestry and not 23andMe. So I wish one day 23andMe would buy out Ancestry, or they could combine as one, because we're trying to, but it's nice to find a third cousin and everything. But it's like, if everyone did 23andMe, then it would be interesting. But the issue is that it is kind of pricey.
For sure.
To get both your Ancestry and health is $200 plus shipping. So I think that holds back a lot of people.
Yeah. But it was kind of crazy too on 23andMe. It was showing you, if you're more likely to have sweaty palms, or if you're going to have a widow's peak or a bald, and it was crazy how spot on a lot of the stuff was.
It's interesting. And you find out you share like 50% with your parents. You share 25% of your DNA with like an aunt, uncle, or grandparent. Your first cousin, you about average of 12.5%.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of breaks down from there. So if someone comes up, like I have a second cousin who has almost 4% DNA, and that we have matching DNA. So we essentially we share great grandparents. But the interesting thing is when you really start breaking it down, we were trying to figure out too, like where, because she was adopted as well, and she doesn't know who her birth parents are. And I broke it down that there's 17 because of my grandparents. I broke it all down. There's 17 people in my family who could be her grandma or grandpa.
That's crazy.
But we don't know who. And then it breaks down to those people's kids. So it actually is quite the investigation detective work that we're figuring out. Even with your dad, Rick, you have to go back to second generation great grandparents, and you have to look up different records and try to go down the list.
Yeah, because
and it's true detective work.
We found on my dad's results, there was a third cousin from his paternal side, which is what we're trying to find. And they shared second great grandparents. And so this guy, Francisco, he was so amazing. We were chatting. His dad was actually in Chihuahua, Mexico, which is where the region is. And he's like, yeah, he's with his parents. I'm going to see what kind of information I can get for you guys, because if we can at least get the name of the second great grandparents, I mean, it's going to be such a case to try and find it, but that gives you a lead, something to work with and work backwards.
It depends on how many children people
have.
I know. The fact that my grandma is one of 10.
Yeah.
And then of the 10, there's another 20. So as the great to grand to parent to us, there's 100 people, but at least something out of the 7 billion people, if you can get the second great grandparents' names of Rick's third cousin, we'll be able to at least narrow it down to 100 people that we're looking into and find a connection to who the dad is rather than 7 billion.
Yeah.
So that was the unique thing. But if you want to save up or you have an extra $200 laying around, that's why we kind of didn't do it together, because I was like
that's a
we're gonna
lot
spend
of money
$400 right now for both of us. I said, let me just do it first, and then we'll see. I already
did Ancestry.
It's definitely worth it, but it is $200. So it just depends.
I think $200 well spent though. If you're
to know about your health as well,
Yes.
and I think it would be very beneficial, because if I can help this woman who's my second cousin find out who her parents are, that's a really good feeling, because I also know what that's like, because we've been talking to Rick. So we understand both sides of it. I understand what it's like to be the person who could actually help her, and that's who we're looking for to help us with Rick. So I'm on both ends of it, so I have the empathy, and I understand, but I also understand too that in certain cases with adoption, there's
a lot of factors
some people
that go into it.
Was somebody 16, was somebody born out of wedlock, was it a male in the family who had a one-night stand and didn't know the woman was pregnant? Back in the day, there was no Facebook or email. If you met at a club and you knew his name was Bill and he was from out of town, how would you ever?
With the information we've been given too about my dad, Rick, I really don't think that his birth father even knew that he existed. You don't know, but just from the info we've been given, and that's a whole nother factor as well.
Yeah, because you just don't know. But it also depends on the age and the circumstance. I think
100%.
There's probably a different energy of somebody who's adopted and they're trying to find their parent when they're 7 years old to 15 years old to 22-year-old. The fact that your dad's almost 70 trying to find his dad who's probably around 90 is a different scenario than my second cousin who's 42 looking for her parents who are probably somewhere in their 60s. I think every story
especially for
is
us
different.
too, trying to get in touch with these older relatives, they may or may not be here.
It's harder for your dad because there's so much. Basically, your biological grandfather, probably a lot of his siblings, if he has any, are probably no longer here, and definitely his parents and beyond are all gone.
Right.
So the best chance we have is finding out Rick's dad and the siblings and their kids.
Sure.
That is who we can have.
Because I probably have some cousins out there too, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You just never know.
Yeah. And then also the name change is pretty interesting, because if you think of a great grandparent, on my dad's side, my great, they were all Smith because they all had sons, and I'm a son.
Right.
So it all goes up. But if I have a daughter, I'm the one. If you you're getting married.
Right.
So your name's going to change. So that would also change the dichotomy, like everything would change. So there's so many variables, and I never knew anything about it, but I become fascinated. We spent a lot of time looking for Rick's dad, and we're on a mission. And so we're going to, and we also want to have, now that Rick has done it, we want Alyssa's mom and my two parents to do it, because if we're going to have kids in the future, it'd be also great to see if there's any like red flag genes to pay attention to or anything like that, because once the four grandparents are there and we're like, wow, there's maybe this or that, or if we're blessed and there's really nothing major, that's going to be a really good feeling going into that. And I was also telling her too, like with my genes, there is zero out of all these years, generations, there has been no one outside of the Europe in like Northern Africa. Like if you look at the color of the map, like there's not one like, oh, a little here. Like we are 100% in that region, and you're such a scatter of different things that I'm going to be the one that breaks the 96 point something European.
Native American.
And our kid's going to be, like you're 14% Native American.
I think so.
Or your dad is, but that's also from like Native American in South America. So it all breaks down too. Like Northern Africa or like Western Asia, like it's all new to me, which shows how much I'd lacked education on geography of like what everything, all the little pieces really are.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the whole adoption thing is very fascinating. And so we're gonna be working on that, but we'll keep you up to date with everything that's happening there. I do recommend 23andMe, and I would recommend doing both rather than just the ancestry or health. Do it all.
I think ancestry was like a little cheaper. Maybe not.
But you don't get the health.
That's true.
And you're not getting the high quality, because 23andMe just seems better to me.
Yeah. I'm also curious too, if there are any listeners who, maybe have been adopted or reunited or been on that journey or still on that journey. If you're ever looking or have been looking for a birth parent, like I'd love to hear just your experience and, what you are finding with that, because we're brand new to this search, or at least we are, we've never obviously done that. So we're just trying to collect any little nuggets that we can that could really help get to the end goal.
Yeah. Specific websites that people have used. There's a lot of secrecy, there's a lot of secrecy, whether it's law or whether it was like how certain parents or people like don't want anyone to know that someone was put up for adoption, or like there's a lot of different stuff that goes into it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting journey, but I did it 23andMe just because I wanted to know my health. I wanted to see how much Italian I really was.
Mm-hmm.
And because I did it, I now am the access point to my second cousin.
It's crazy.
To potentially help her find her parents, because I know it's going to be one of the 17.
Yeah.
One of the 17 people that are in my grandparent line that I know is going to be her grandparent.
Yep.
So I think that's really like interesting. So even if you did 23andMe and you weren't thinking like I did, there might be a first cousin, a half brother, a second cousin who's looking for their parents or their grandparents or someone else, and you could be that bridge for them. So we really do like that. The next thing I want to shift gears with, this is something I really want to break down and talk about, is the documentary Leaving Neverland.
Yes.
With what? Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah. Well, it's with Wade Robson and Jimmy. What's his last name? Shape something. We'll find out right now. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a very tough stuff kind of topic. It was very intense and, difficult to watch, because these gentlemen have come forward stating that, they were victims of Michael Jackson, and it was a document or a special HBO did. Did you find his last name?
I'm still looking.
It was Jimmy something.
I don't know.
I'll find it.
But there's basically there's a lot of stories going back and forth, and I think we were kind of young. We obviously were young in the 90s when he was accused. It's also very uncomfortable to talk about because he's not here to defend himself.
James Safechuck. Wade Robson and James Safechuck.
Yes. So it's a two-part series. on HBO, and it's 4 hours of these two gentlemen and their families going through vivid detail that my opinion, and you all can have your own opinion with all the information and research that you want to do. In my opinion, I find it extremely hard to believe that these two guys are making it up, especially on the back end, that there's been 2 other people who've accused Michael Jackson of abusing them.
Yeah.
And it never came, he was proven innocent. So you can't really argue that.
Right.
But now it's 4 people. And just my take on it is that if they were really making this up, it's the most elaborate documentary, like made up series of all time, because it's not just these 2 guys who they happened to catch on a TV show who decided to come out and it's a 5-minute conversation.
Right.
This was a actual story being told with video and pictures and testimonials, not only from Jimmy and Wade, but their now wives, their parents, or one of their parents or grandparents. A lot of people are involved telling this story, and to hear these stories and to see their reactions, it's just unless they just did a way better acting job. But when you look at someone like Jussie Smollett, who was lying on GMA, compared to these 2 guys, it's a different energy. Same thing with Jordan. What was her name?
Jordan Woods.
She had a weird energy
with Jada Pinkett. Yes.
Like she had a weird energy. Smollett had a weird energy. These 2 guys did not have a weird energy. It seemed very honest to me. Yeah. It didn't seem like any
an argument not a lot, but some people have said is that, hey, these guys, why are they just coming forward now? Maybe they just want the fame, the money, blah, blah, blah. But I truly believe that they're coming forward now because they both have children and they understand after all of these years, and now they finally got therapy.
They mentioned it.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's what they said. They understood it, because basically how we think of it is we're taking it all out of context because we weren't in that situation. Right. But with these guys, when one of them were abused from 7 years old to 14 years old, they at the time didn't think of it as abuse. They didn't go home and tell their parents, because it supposedly him and Michael they've been talking how, he would say, we're going to get in trouble if this ever gets out. Yeah. We're going to go to jail if anything out. This is us loving each other. It took until they were older and had their own kids to really put into perspective that what he was doing was wrong, because they actually they loved Michael.
Well, yeah.
It's a complicated story that can't be discussed fully on the podcast, but I encourage everyone who's listening to watch the 4-hour documentary if you have interest, to be able to see if you think they're making all this up, which would be mind-blowing to me if it was fake, because holy cow, it seemed real as hell to me.
Well, and also, too, this happened during their formative years, so who they ended up becoming was very different probably than who they would have been had this traumatic stuff not happened to them. And I think with different kind of abuse and just troubles that you go through, it affects you later in your life. Like, I even know for me, I mean, this is completely different, but the accident, everything we went through, it took a good solid 3 to 4 years before I got struck with anxiety, and then I dealt with it. Yeah. This was something that happened, when they were children. Like, I was already an adult when this happened. Yeah. So just from experience of going through something, hard, completely different than this, but, my own sort of trauma, it hit me later. That's what they always say will happen. So, and
I think even more specifically with
children,
people who were abused as a child, and it was never aggressive or violent. It was all very loving. So that's another different angle. Like if somebody is like raped or abused or touched inappropriately in a violent or, hey, I feel wrong and fearful, is also probably a whole different thing than someone who believes that this is a normal relationship at a young age and that's how people love each other. So I don't even know, like, we obviously don't have the credentials to be able to speak on any of that, but I'm just saying, like, the things that we're gathering and learning, I can see their case of why this was right. And it's also kind of strange too, just how many people are coming forward and with this kind of detail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, to really know and to really see. And the thing that bothers me the most is how people, even I think the guys blamed their parents at one point.
I was just going to ask you what you thought of that.
In retrospect, if you think, how would the parents ever let their 8-year-old or 10-year-old, however old he was, stay at Michael's house for 12 days or sleep in the same bed as Michael while they're in the other room sleeping when they're at hotels and everything?
Right.
It seems ridiculous. We watched that documentary, Abducted in Plain Sight, on Netflix as well. And the parents allowed this grown man to be in bed with the child. Like,
and
it sounds,
he was hooking up with the mom and the dad.
That's a whole separate documentary that we could get into another time. But like, it's like, it's a very interesting watch. But it seems that when you look at it, you're like, yes, I would never do that because we are now suspicious and we know, or we think we would know better.
Right.
But times were different back then as well.
Yeah.
There wasn't maybe as many people who were known as pedophiles, or people maybe had their, like, even back in the day, people say, oh, our doors were unlocked. Like, I feel like there was more trust, even in Abducted in Plain Sight, I think was in the 70s. And this was more in the 90s, 2000s, early 2000s. But I don't think you can completely blame the parents. Yes, I think it was boneheaded, but they were manipulated by, supposedly manipulated by Michael Jackson, being the biggest star in the world that, like, basically no one's even come close to. Yes, the Biebers and Arianas are like that big, and Prince, but like, MJ at this time, he was the biggest thing. He had living the high life, this extraordinary thing. It's like how they make people feel on The Bachelor. Everyone falls in love so fast because they're in these extraordinary circumstances, hang gliding. It's like a normal relationship. You meet someone, you go to Starbucks. You don't get flown to Portugal and then do all this. So you start to have this different emotion. And I bet you when it all came out, everything flooded into the parents' head that, oh yeah, this all makes sense now. Just like when I had my money stolen, or if someone cheats on you, every little thing that felt weird, you kind of go, wait a minute, no. And then when it comes out, you're like, every phone call, text, everything, it all makes sense, and you feel like an idiot. Same thing when I had my money stolen. There are so many times that I go, this felt weird, but I go, oh, I just don't, blah, 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 blah. You make excuses, and then when it comes out,
that, and it
all hits you, and you go, idiot. So yes, the parents didn't make the best decision, but these stories are also shedding light that parents are now going to be double careful of, like,
which is another,
and like, did you ever have that story growing up? I was telling you, like, I remember specifically as a young kid, I don't remember the correct words, but I remember the conversation that I think it was my mom, that she just goes that you know, if anyone ever, like, no one should ever see or touch, I think she said, my pee-pee. She goes, you would have to tell, like, I think she said, you tell your, if anyone ever, no one's allowed to do that. So if anyone ever does, you make sure to tell it. So I remember her telling me that very, very briefly, but I remember it more, the feeling of that convo than that. But I don't know how old I was. Maybe I was like 6 or 7 when she told me that. And I just think having these documentaries out there, whether this ends up that they're full of crap or it's true, which I believe it is, in my opinion, but it's at least bringing awareness and more conversation around, let's protect our kids. Let's protect anybody who's abused, and I love that they're getting this information out there about, like, sexual harassment and abuse, and like, and also really trying to figure out and diagnose what's going on with the people who are the abusers, and really focusing on that as well. We can do as much protecting as we can with our own kids and our own teenagers and our own selves. Yeah. But it's also really shedding light on, like, what's going on with people, if that's true about Michael Jackson. You know, what was the issue? Yeah.
And you know, it's crazy going into watching that documentary. I always knew who Wade Robson was. He was a really big choreographer for NSYNC, Britney Spears, and you saw that a bit in the documentary. But I remember seeing him on all these behind the scenes on MTV of him teaching them their choreography. And I was like, he's so cool. And like, we always, like, my friend Sarah and I would always follow him, and we're like, it's so awesome he gets to do that for these huge stars. And then all these years later, to see him come out with, you know, something like this, it was just so interesting to watch.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You don't really know how to feel. You watch it, and then, I don't mean for this to be inappropriate, but, like, you lose because I love his music. And if he was a pedophile, I'm not going to support or want to listen to all that music. And the same thing with all these other people. Like, I feel weird watching Kevin Spacey films and, like,
or R. Kelly music.
That's like,
it's just awful.
It just depends, like, on what's, like, you know what I mean? I don't know. There's just certain things that, like, there's a lot of these things coming up, but when you hear multiple things about the same person over and over again.
Well, don't you think rumors start somewhere? Like
some of it's fake, but
unless a bunch of people got together and decided, hey, this is what we're going to do. But then you look at the Michael Jackson situation. He was hanging out and having sleepovers and holding hands with children publicly, having these big slumber parties. Like, I don't know. It's questionable to me.
Yeah, I don't know how to really, it's just when you see it, it's hard not to think that he's guilty.
I know.
I just find it hard to believe, like, how you could get a story and the emotion out of people and the description, and like it'll all start coming out. Like if you look at
but also too, what I found very interesting, the way that Wade and James talked about their relationships with Michael. They loved him. They wanted to be like his number one friend, as they would call it. And I just find it very interesting that they stayed loyal to him if they were lying for him in court, because they went twice when they were kids, once when they were children, once when they were adults. They went to testify, saying that he was innocent.
Wade did. Jimmy didn't do it the second time.
He didn't. Because Wade got subpoenaed the second time, right? I think so. Anywho, I think it's very interesting that once Michael passed, that's when they finally came out. Almost like they couldn't dare come out when he was alive because they still didn't want to mess up that sick bond with him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just find it very interesting because Wade explained that the last time he saw Michael, Michael's children were there at the house in Las Vegas. Wade was with his wife. And then like Michael just disappeared after drinking that night. And that was the last time he ever saw him. But he waited until that was a year before he passed, I think.
I think so.
It just shows that there's so much that, like, if it's true, man, it's just so horrible.
Well, and then it's like you hear about, like, for instance, the two-part HBO documentary Leaving Neverland has put renewed scrutiny on sexual abuse allegations against Michael Jackson, but in the eyes of Oprah Winfrey, the cultural fallout will go far beyond the king of pop. For me, this moment transcends Michael Jackson. It is much bigger than any one person, Winfrey said during an hour-long special that aired after the conclusion of Neverland on Monday night. This is a moment in time that allows us to see this societal corruption.
Oh, because Wade and James were on Oprah's show. We actually haven't seen that.
See, this is really interesting. Like, this is one of those things that I'm so curious about what's going to be talked about, because something's going to come out of this.
Yeah.
I think, especially in today's world, I still think 2005, it was early before, like, now with everything the past 3 years that's coming out, this is going to be interesting to hear. Like, I want to hear, and this is how Alyssa and I like to take everything in. Like, when we heard about the Jussie Smollett thing, you initially go, oh my God, that's so terrible. Then you start hearing the other sides of it and you hear like everything that's going on. It's like, I just love listening to every side of it.
Yeah.
I want to listen to the people who go, these two guys are lying. And I want to hear why.
And learn.
And then I want to listen to all the people who came out and see why, and like really see, have an opinion on it.
Collect all the information from every party.
And people who have more information and really see this, but also, like, I'm just curious what's going to happen.
I know. We shall see. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a very intense watch. But if that topic interests you, I mean, we were just blown away by the way they told the story and all of the people that were involved.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm interested to look at more clips and research and just see what people say. But it just seemed really, really honest to me. Like, it just really did. But to wrap everything up on yet again, bring out of the darkness,
to some lighter. Let's chat The Bachelor.
If you hadn't noticed, we did a lot of
catching up
pop culture catching up this weekend.
Now I gotta just explain here that Freddie and I just started getting into The Bachelor. What was it, like a year ago with Ari? We watched that one, and Becca. Yeah. We watched we weren't as into it, but we started watching it with them.
This is the first season that I've been glued.
Every week. We are just so excited for Monday nights.
I watched 2 of them live, like of the day of. Like,
yeah.
I think we wait like 40 minutes so we don't have to watch commercials.
Yeah.
But then we're just like, we have to watch it. Super fascinating. Just saw the cliffhanger.
Yeah. So last night, Colton was supposed to have his 3 fantasy suite dates with the different women. He did it with Tasha. And then, oh my God, what's her name?
Cassie. And he never made it to Hannah B as of yet.
But he basically is obsessed with Cassie, and she's just not about it. But her biggest argument was that she didn't know if she could get there with him, meaning she didn't know if she could fall in love with him, be with him forever. Her dad kept coming on the show explaining, hey, you'll know. But the whole thing is, and Colton even said to her, he goes, this doesn't have to end in an engagement. Like, let's just date and see where it goes. Obviously, he wants to find the one. But if he feels that strongly about her, why not just see where it can go? Because also, she was all over him on both the dates that they showed. And that's like sending mixed signals if you're not sure.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely, I think people have broken up over like, will you marry me? And they go, no. And then you're like, what the hell? But he even said, you don't need to say yes.
Yeah.
Let's just date after the show. I won't even ask you. And she still wouldn't, which is like.
She wants to be the Bachelorette. Just saying right now, you heard it here first.
There's 2 things that are going to happen. And we've predicted it. She is either gone, and will be the Bachelorette next season, or he's going to tell Tasha and Hannah, I'm in love with Cassie. I'm done with the show. I'm going to find her.
Yeah.
And he goes, tracks her down, and they end up together.
Yep.
I'll be blown away because after everything he did, I would feel uncomfortable if he went with Tasha or Hannah now. He can't.
He can't.
He said, I think of you.
When I'm with the other women, like that's, oh my God, absolutely not.
It's like the most effed up roller coaster where you just feel so bad. It's so messed up. The show concept is so messed up, but yet you can't stop watching it.
It's my favorite train wreck.
The girls are all friends. They're down to like 4 of them, and they're all like, hey, it's like that would never happen in any other scenario in life. You're all dating the same guy. What's up? Let's go hang out.
Unless it's Sister Wives. But that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole, but
especially if you're competing for one man. Oh, it's just all sorts of messed up. But originally, who was your favorite? I know we had the same one, I believe. Who did you want originally to win before we saw last night?
I didn't really ever know, except Tasha kept rubbing off on me.
Yeah, same. I think she could have given Colton a great life. She's 28, kind-hearted person. Seems like she really knows what she wants.
And they seemed like they had good chemistry there. It seemed like they had. It seems like they had more of a friendship connection that I think would outlast, where him and Cassie seem to have more of a like sexual, like lusting kind of like passionate, like physical kind of thing that may not be there in 6 months, and you need that friendship to keep both going. And with Hannah, I just never seen enough, and like all the other people.
I really liked her in the beginning, but I think she's so young, like needs to go live her life a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm. When's the next season too? Because we should comment on every episode.
Ooh, I love that.
This way we can see like how right we really are if we really dig into it. Because I don't think I ever guessed anybody through the whole season.
Well, here's my other question. If Colton, for whatever reason, I don't know if this ever has happened on The Bachelor, but if he doesn't find love, will they bring him back, or is that just it?
Oh, if he doesn't?
Yeah, for some reason he doesn't. What would they do? Can they really bring him back with all...
It would either be the most boring thing to watch him again about, like, because the through line was him being a virgin.
Yeah.
Finding love. It's like they'd have to have a new storyline for him unless he was still a virgin, but then it'd be the same thing. And then you already know him. And I don't know if it'd be boring or if it'd be like the sequel where you're like, oh my God, it's him. You're a fan. Yeah. And you can't wait to watch another season with him. That would what they'd have to figure out. Because
I suppose next will be the Bachelorette. Maybe. I don't know how they do it, right? Yeah, because they had Ari and then Becca went and she did that last. The Bachelorette.
Yes.
And then now Colton. Yeah, I remember they were saying a lot on The Bachelor. A lot of the girls in the house were saying, oh my goodness, there are some girls here who just want to be the next Bachelorette. And that was Colton's biggest fear. He was always so nervous that girls were there for the wrong reasons. And then he had all this drama last night with Cassie, and I really felt for him.
Well, tonight is gonna be the
Women's
drama.
Oh.
Next Monday and Tuesday is gonna be cool.
I just love that my best friend and the love of my life loves this shit with me. It's so good.
It catches your attention, you know?
So
like we didn't really watch last season's that much, so it just wasn't as interesting.
Yeah.
But this year has been like
really good.
so damn good.
And one last show, speaking of really damn good, it's more reality, is The Challenge.
Yes.
We've been getting so into MTV's The Challenge. They all compete for a grand prize of $1 million. But they have a lot of really cool physical challenges that they do. But then also there's so much drama and politics in the house. And we just watch it. We're like, oh my gosh, what am I watching? Like, it's so good this season.
Reality is just an easy watch. It feels like it's such an escape to like, and then we have like a couple of dramas that we watch, but like, for the most part, like we're like really big into reality. It's like so crazy. So
keeps you.
But yeah, so there's a lot of discussion we can have. I'm curious to see how the whole rest of the 23andMe unfolds, how the Leaving Neverland, how this whole story unfolds. I'm excited to see what happens there, and same thing with the Bachelor. So it's going to be really good. So thank you for tuning in.
Love you guys.
We will see you very soon.